Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Biringer, back with NHLRumors.com. Please like the video, subscribe along to the channel, official NHL Rumors here on YouTube. We are back with the Rumor Roundup from the National Hockey League. There's a lot of trade chatter coming out of the NHL GM's meetings this past week. A week ago, everybody was up in Toronto. Quick meeting before the big meeting down in Boca Raton later in the year, leading into the trade deadline. Lots of issues to discuss there, including goaltender interference. I think they spoke about it up there in Toronto. It was on the docket. It's been a controversial topic throughout the start of the regular season. They've been getting consistency from the officials, but again, everybody wants a standard. Everybody wants to know what the standard is. And as one GM spoke to RG.org, they said they just want to know it so they can tell their video coaches what to look for. That's going to be a topic of conversation later on in the GM's meetings. However, let's get around to the Rumor Roundup. Here we go. Let's start in Pittsburgh. Look, we saw the trade, Lars Eller going back to the Washington Capitals for just draft picks. And look, it's been documented on NHLRumors.com. I myself has been written about this. It's a tough balancing act for the Pittsburgh Penguins. How can you balance being competitive while trying to do a rebuild? Look, the edict is from ownership. Win with Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. The problem is they're just not very competitive and they're not very good. Jake Getzel is now down in Tampa. That was a piece you could have built around. Unfortunately, they have a lot of unmovable contracts. Letang, Erik Karlsson, Malkin's another one. But Malkin is a guy that it seems to be out there, according to Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet. Again, Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period. Seems to be a guy that's getting interest. The problem is he's not going to want to leave. He has full no movement. So it's Karlsson potentially after July 1st when the bonus money is handed out, given out to him. Do they move on from him? Because it was a trade that, let's be honest, probably didn't need to happen in Pittsburgh. But again, at the time, they needed to be competitive, and that's a tough balancing act for this Penguins team. For GM Kyle Dubas, who, got all the control in Pittsburgh, but does he really have it? Unlike in Toronto, he really didn't have it. He was just there and made moves. It feels like the same thing in Pittsburgh. But could Karlsson be on the move? It is a potential just because of the contract, the dollars and cents. It makes sense. Marcus Pettersson is another guy that they can move on from, trade him at the deadline. You have to get value in return. They didn't really get it with Jake Getzel. So let's see if they can do it with Marcus Pettersson because he is eligible for an extension. There were contract talks on a new contract. Unfortunately, they have been stalled, and now they're moving on. And they could move on and trade him and get the value that they need to really start this retool rebuild on the fly. And speaking of rebuild or retool on the fly, let's head up north of the border, the Calgary Flames. GM Craig Conroy spoke with myself, RG.org, also NHLRumors.com. He said he's looking for a right shot center. Now everybody in the league is looking for a right shot center. But think about it. Every center that they have down the middle is a left shot. Elias Lindholm was a right shot centerman. He's no longer there. He's in Boston. So they're looking to get a right shot centerman. This has been out there for a while now, but just to get confirmation from a general manager like Craig Conroy for the Calgary Flames, Frank Saravalli first reported this back on Amazon Prime, coast to coast on Thursday night that they were looking. But then, again, it all depends on how the Flames finish this season, as he stated, right? Whether you're a buyer or you're a seller, it all depend on how they finish because they're playing well right now. They're a surprise start. They would love to add a center. But like he said, most teams are looking for a center. But he also reiterated, like Bill Armstrong has reiterated, teams are always looking to improve. There's a lot of chatter right now, but they're trying to lay the groundwork for potential trades later on. New Jersey's doing it. Calgary's doing it. And look, the issue with Calgary is their hands are tied. They have a first-round pick tied up in a Sean Monahan trade that is from 2 years ago. And look, it would make sense if they could just move it, but they don't know which one's going to be higher. If it all depends on where they finish. If they're outside the top 10, you know what's going to happen. So again, that comes down to that. They could move New Jersey's first-round pick that we're given in the Jacob Markstrom trade. But again, is that something that they want to explore? And also, they're looking to extend Rasmus Andersson. Despite his name being out there, despite teams calling about him, they want to lock him up on a long-term extension. They really like what he brings. He wants to be in Calgary. He has a great defensive partner in Kevin Ball. So that's something to keep an eye on. And if they do make the deal for the center or an upgrade at forward, they're going to want an age-appropriate player, somebody under the age of 30 that can grow with this team and get it ready for when the building opens, similar to what we saw what they got with Kevin Ball in the Markstrom trade, similar to what they got for Toffoli acquiring Sharon Govich from the New Jersey Devils. Age-appropriate, controllable asset. Again, it just comes down to where they finish. So a lot of things to keep an eye on with the Calgary Flames. Similarly, the Nashville Predators, right? They're starting to get it together, but this is a big road trip because, again, they're a team looking for a center, right? Again, they would love to add a center. They'd love to add a top four defenseman. They thought they had that in Brady Shea. They may still have it, but again, it takes time. Barry Trotz threw out warning shots when he was on ESPN radio down in Nashville. Said, look, if we don't get our act together, we're going to be turning this thing around. We're going to go into full rebuild mode. And they just played fantasy hockey on July 1st. So there's a lot of work to be done. Again, according to sources I've spoken to down in Nashville, while it was a threat, the players' no change is a real possibility. And, could the coach be on the hot seat? Well, if the road trip doesn't go as well as expected, he could be the first thing out. Now, they have pieces. They waived Dante Fabro. He's now in Columbus. Teams were calling about him. They just couldn't lock down a deal, and the value for him is high. Again, a player that could be used somewhere also in Alberta, which is the Edmonton Oilers, who've been looking for a defenseman, top four defenseman ever since Philip Broberg, as we documented here on NHL Rumors in the previous video. He was the top four defenseman the Edmonton Oilers needed. They decided not to match the offer sheet, and now he's in St. Louis, and right now he's hurt. But they're looking for a defenseman. They've been looking for a defenseman since the offseason. Maybe they get Cody Ceci back. That's not going to help their top four, but he's a steady, stay-at-home defenseman who played really well for them in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. There were some games that were rocky, but he's an NHL-proven defenseman, and that's something the Oilers need right now. Could they look at the Montreal Canadiens and look at David Savard, right? They'll be in Montreal Monday night, and they were there. And look, Savard's name's going to be out there, $3.5 million cap hit. He's been, moved before the deadline. We saw what Tampa did to get him. I brought him in for some championship runs there down in Tampa. It was a great pickup. The Oilers have been looking at David Savard. Is that a player that they want to get? Again, you have to lay the groundwork right now because the salary cap plays a big time factor in how teams deal. It's not the trade deadline, right? The salaries aren't lower. If you make a move now, you're going to have to pay most of the salary out. That's why teams like to wait until the trade deadline. And a team like, the New York Islanders, who are dealing with injuries, and all the best to Mike Riley. They found a heart condition after his concussion. They're dealing with injuries to Matthew Barzal, Alex Romanoff. You're also up front, you're dealing with Anthony Duclair. They're trying to add offense, but they're also trying to add a piece on defense. Isaiah George has been a great add for that team, but they're trying to add somebody else now too. So the Oilers, Flames always looking for D, Nashville looking for D, Islanders looking for D. Look, everybody wants a top four defenseman. They don't grow on trees. Could any of these teams look at David Jiricek out there in Columbus? Again, sometimes it takes these defensemen a little bit longer to get accustomed to the National Hockey League. Again, Columbus just picked up Dante Fabro, new opportunity for him based on timeline. Could somebody like that they go after? Because it feels like, and as reported by Elliot Friedman, Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period as well, it feels like his time in Columbus is winding down and something could happen as early as this week. So these are some items we need to be keeping an eye on because, look, Pittsburgh not playing well. They have pieces teams want, but a lot of it's unmovable contract and it's depth scoring because the Devils need a top six winger. The problem is it's not going to come from Pittsburgh. Could they look at Columbus later on at the deadline and try to reacquire Kevin LeBanc? It is an option. Can he help? Again, you can't do it now. Teams are always looking. The chatter is high, but they lay the groundwork for what could happen down the road. And obviously, there's a guy up there in Buffalo, Bo Byram, while Kevin Adams, the general manager, doesn't want to move any of his top talent. the Buffalo Sabres are loaded on that left side with Owen Powell, Rasmus Dahlin, and Mattias Samuelsson, and they're forcing Byram to play the right side. And he's a left shot playing the right side. He could use a potential change of scenery as well. So again, some things to keep an eye on here in the Rumor Roundup. Jim Biringer, NHLRumors.com. Again, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We'll be back again for another Rumor Roundup later in the week. Take care.